lads, so the Titanic was anchored, as I've said, at Roach's Point, not right up against this building, but just out at the mouth of the harbour. It would be right behind this island here in front of us, would be Roach's Point. This island here is called Spike Island, served as a prison for a number of years, but it is a tourist attraction now. It was once considered one of the largest prisons in the world at one point, and one of the most secure. For that reason, it was nicknamed Irish Alcatraz, because it was so tight security. Now, it is a tourist attraction now since 2004, so you can come over and back as you like. You're never going to get stuck over there for any reason. So beyond that is Roach's Point, and that's where the Titanic was anchored. The passengers that would be boarding the Titanic would wait where we're waiting right now. They wouldn't have been able to have seen the ship in front of them. But the smaller service boats, the tenders that I've mentioned, would pull up to the building. They'd pull up to this very pier used in 1912. This pier is a historic artefact in and of itself. It's about 150 years old, and over 1.5 million immigrants left Queenstown from this very pier. They would have left from a number of places in Ireland, because emigration really was a really big part of their culture at the time. Now, this pier is nicknamed Heartbreak Pier because at this time transatlantic travel costs were extremely high, and most of the time people could only ever afford a one-way ticket. Oftentimes they even had their tickets paid for by immigrant relatives or friends who would have emigrated prior to them, had earned money abroad and were able to send it back, but even then they were too expensive to buy anything more than a one-way. And so people leaving from this pier, those 1.5 million immigrants leaving from around Ireland, would have left for the most part for good, and for that reason it is nicknamed Heartbreak Pier. Now, I'm going to speak in detail about a couple of the passengers boarding the Titanic specifically. We know there were 3 in first class. They would wait at the door we've just come out of, 7 in second class down here in this corner, and 113 in third class down below us. But at the time there would have been no restaurant, there was no seating, there was no railing even against the water, so these passengers were dealt with the utmost uncomfort and unsafety. Now, the tenders that I've mentioned, the 2 tenders of which there were to ferry passengers out to the Titanic, were named the PS Ireland, carried first and second class passengers only, and the second, the PS America, carried all 113 third class passengers alongside the mail bags. Now, I've said the Titanic is a mailing steamer ship, so it would have had a lot of mail bags, and you can imagine 113 people on top of their luggage and the mail bags. It was completely different to the PS Ireland, which carried 3 first class and 10 second class. So a very extreme difference there. Now, in detail, I'll speak about a couple of the passengers who boarded the Titanic and their stories. Most of these people travelled in groups just to have a bit of safety, because third class was often quite hostile of an environment, and so people did want to travel with someone they knew just for that safety in numbers. But there were the odd passengers who travelled on their own. It was just a lot rarer. So first we have 14 people travelling in a group. They were from a small parish called Abergule in County Mayo, which is up the country of Ireland. These passengers were travelling in hopes of, again, a better life abroad, and the parish Abergule was only a population of about 80. So you can imagine 14 people leaving such a small community behind. That would have had a really detrimental effect, but it was a risk worth taking. These passengers were travelling to the States in hopes of getting a better future, opportunities for more money, and sending that money back home, which would help Abergule flourish once more. Now, on the eve of their journey, they held a tradition called an American Wake, a night of drinking and sing-song and celebrating these passengers before they would leave forever, possibly, and for that reason it is nicknamed an American Wake, because it really was a night of grieving as well. Now, we also have 3 siblings travelling together, the McCoy siblings. They were travelling from County Longford, also up the country of Ireland. It was Bernard, Alice and Agnes McCoy, travelling to meet their sister Mary, who'd already settled in Brooklyn, New York. And lastly, we have Margaret Rice. She was a 39-year-old mother of 5 young boys. They were between the ages of 2 and 10. She was from Ireland. She was from, again, up the country in County Athlone. But she travelled to the States, where she met a man and had her 5 young sons. Now, after her husband died in a tragic accident, she chose to return home with her sons to her home in Athlone, her birthplace. After a few years in Athlone, she planned to bring them back to their birthplace in the States. She actually planned to travel back there in May, but she changed her plans solely so she could travel on board the Titanic in April. That was because she knew people on the Titanic traveling, again possibly with their children too, and it was so much easier to travel with someone you knew than traveling on your own. Especially, you can imagine, if you had 5 young children with you, you'd want as much help as you could get. And so for that reason she changed her plans and boarded the Titanic in April instead. Now, as well as the 123 passengers boarding here in Queenstown, we have 7 passengers who disembarked here in Queenstown. They were all first-class passengers, and they were all travelling from Southampton here to Queenstown. One of these is Lily Odell. She was part of a rich working family from London, and here on a working holiday. And she was really moved and deeply